Welcome back to the channel. Today, I'm going to be bringing you along on a journey, and that journey is building a much needed miter saw station for my shop. This project consists of about 99.9% plywood and a little bit of veneer and solid wood edge banding around the tops. But before I get too far down the road, let's talk about breaking down these 11 sheets of plywood. See, it's important in my shop with limited space to be able to break down these full sheets of plywood easily and accurately. In order to do this, I focused first on a solid foundation that will help hold the plywood while I cut it. I purchased a 4-foot by 4-foot Bora centipede stand, and then I built a 2x4 grid that sits on top of it. The great thing about using this base is that I can fold it up, place it back in the bag, and then put it away when I'm done. The same goes for the 2x4 base. I've attached the pieces using pocket holes so it's easy to take apart, but actually, I can just set the grid aside and leave it assembled because it's narrow enough to sit behind my dust collector. Now, on to the most important part of breaking down sheet goods, and that's accuracy. Using my track saw, I can strike a line where I need to cut and line the track up to the scribed line, but it's not going to give me the repeatability that I desire. I've always admired the experienced folks on social media break down sheet goods. They seem to have a plan and the equipment to deliver the pinpoint accuracy they need day in and day out. So in order to achieve this, I purchased a few items to go along with my track saw. First, I purchased a parallel guide set from TSO Products that came in 2 lengths, which allowed me to rip and crosscut a full sheet of plywood very accurately, and it gave me the repeatability with stop blocks, as you can see in the clips. With this setup, I broke down the 3/4 inch plywood for all of the cabinet panels and left a few panels cut rough size so I can batch those out at the table saw for things like stretchers, toe kick pieces, and drawer parts. Cutting the toe kicks on the panels is pretty straightforward. I just used a stop block at the bandsaw and then made repeatable cuts on all of the side panels. Before assembling the cabinets, I need to cut the stretchers and the toe kick pieces to size. So I did this over at the table saw, which made this a pretty easy process. I made sure that when I was breaking these panels down at the track saw, that I left them large enough to batch these out. So first at the table saw, I cut them to width and then cut them to length using a miter gauge. Assembly of the cabinets was achieved using pocket holes. I needed a pocket hole jig, so the fine folks over at Mosca sent me this one to use, which is absolutely fantastic. All aluminum with great dust collection and pretty handy extension arms. Now it's time to assemble the base. I did that using the right angle clamping jigs in the back to assist in holding them up. They're extremely handy. The first panels that I installed were the toe kick panels. Again, these were all pre-drilled with the pocket holes, so it was just a matter of lining it up, making sure that it was flush, clamp the board in place, and install the pocket screws. I did this for both of the toe kick pieces, and then I went to the top of the cabinet and installed the top stretcher. Next, I rotated the cabinet panel and then installed the 3 stretchers in the back. Since I'm only using one divider wall in between the first, second, and third cabinet in this big base cabinet, I needed to offset the pocket holes in the middle cabinet area for the toe kick and all of the stretchers so that they didn't run into each other when I installed them. And to achieve this, I made a shim to help bump the stretchers over in the jig to offset the holes. Once drilled, I attached them to the cabinet panels the same way, and I repeated this for the same little standalone base cabinet that I had to the right of the miter saw station. 2 side panels and a bunch of stretchers with pocket holes pulling that all together. Most garage floors aren't exactly level, and my shop floor is no exception. So to help with this, I installed levelers on the bottom of the cabinet in several locations. They are really simple to install, just 4 screws on each foot, and that's all it takes. Now, before putting away the plywood station, I cut the tops to size. The tops consist of 2 pieces of 3/4 inch plywood, giving me a hefty 1.5 inch thick top. To marry the 2 pieces, I used glue and a few brad nails to hold it in place while the glue dried. Nothing too fancy. I recently purchased a battery-powered brad nailer, and it is so much nicer not having to break out the compressor and the hoses. However, it's not all roses and sunshine. There are a couple of cons to owning a battery-powered nailer. Well, at least the one that I have, which is the Porter Cable. The first being that it is much heavier than the pneumatic nailer, and for the second, it is a little slower, but the pros for me in my shop outweigh the cons just with the portability. Now, how useful would a miter saw station be without drawers? Well, let's build some, and 13 to be exact. I went back to the pile of broken down 3/4 inch plywood according to my cut list and cut all of the drawer sides to width. Next, I use a crosscut sled to cut them to precise length. When building drawers for cabinets that will be mounted using drawer slides, you really can't go off of drawings. You need to measure the opening to make sure. For my slides, I needed a 1/2 inch space on the left and the right side of the drawers, meaning that the drawers needed to be about 1 inch narrower than the opening in order to fit the slides. So with the pieces cut to size and there's a groove cut in the bottom for the drawer bottoms, I can cut the pocket hole joinery on the front and the back panels of the drawers and start to assemble them. Now the smaller cabinet on the right side of the miter saw station, it's going to have pull-out trays for my Milwaukee packouts to set on. So they are basically just narrow drawers that are constructed and assembled the same way as the other drawers. Now, the funnest part of this build, it's time to mount drawer slides. This takes some planning to know where you want to place them, not only on the drawer boxes, but also where they need to go on the inside walls of the cabinet. I opted to mount my slides to the bottom of the boxes, which is really simple to do. Just sit the box down on a flat surface and slide the drawer slide out and install the screws, referencing that flat surface that the drawer is sitting on. It's a really simple mechanism and there's not any math involved. Now, to install the slides on the cabinet, I start at the bottom with the bottom drawer. I know that the bottom drawer is a 1/4 inch off of the bottom of the toe kick, so I used a 1/4 inch piece of plywood as a shim and slid it under the slide and then installed the screws. Next, I slid that panel over to the right side of the cabinet, set the other drawer slide on top of it, and installed those screws. From here, I work my way up to the next box. I know that each drawer has a 3/4 of an inch gap in between them, so I installed the drawer, put a 3/4 inch piece of plywood scrap on top of the bottom drawer, and then install the next slide by referencing that shim. Now I keep repeating this all the way up, which made this a painless operation. Install the drawer, put the shim on top, install the slide, and keep repeating it all the way up. So that's going to wrap it for part 1. In the next video, I'm going to be making some veneered panels for the drawer fronts, nice and fancy, install solid edge banding on the tops, and then finally get the tray or the panel installed that the miter saw will be sitting on. So be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to get notified when I release that video. I hope you enjoyed this one and perhaps learned a thing or two. If you did, let me know in a comment below and don't forget to hit the like button. Thanks for watching.